Melville's masterpiece, Moby Dick, is littered with characters, some complex, others not so much, each of which have their own story and moral a reader can interpret. Although Ahab is not the main character of the novel, he has the most interesting, volatile, yet sad story. Once a strong, young, goal-driven man transforms into a mean, authoritative, and obsessive man through years at sea and most importantly through his experience with the white whale, Moby Dick. Captain Ahab, leader of the Pequod's expedition, is named after an Israelite king. The two draw a very close comparison because both worshipped idols, and therefore drew upon themselves the wrath of God. Ahab makes an idol out of the whale, Moby Dick. His desire for vengeance upon the whale that took his leg off grows into an obsession that takes hold of his mind, body, and soul. The first time he encounters his crew, he informs them that their expedition is not one with commercial intentions, but rather they are setting out to kill the white whale. Ahab exclaims to the crew, "Death to Moby Dick! God hunt us all if we do not hunt Moby Dick to his death." From then on, he is consumed by the thought of taking his revenge on the whale. This escalates to the point where he, quote, seemed ready to sacrifice all moral interests to that one passion. Although Ahab's character is strikingly similar to his biblical counterpart, his story itself is most similar to that of Jonah. Jonah's story is told by Father Mapple in the chapter titled The Sermon. Jonah flees from God and is then interlocked in a battle of sorts with a Leviathan creature, just as Ahab does. Neither heed the warnings God has given them. The major difference between the two is in regards to their personal repentance. Jonah realizes his mistake and asks for forgiveness. He is then delivered to safety. Ahab continually tries to avoid God, as well as ignore his presence. If Ahab had realized he cannot outsmart, ignore, or avoid God, and given up, then he too may have received the same mercy Jonah did. Nevertheless, Ahab never shows any sort of humility. "I never yet saw him kneel," says Stubb. Ahab has a passion to hunt Moby Dick that consumes him, causing a loss of his sense of humanity and identity. He is, in turn, faced with a divine punishment. Ahab's demise is not immediate. He is having a constant battle in his mind between madness and sanity. What drives him to ultimately become mad is his own actions and choices. They build upon each other until the end, where they finally have their repercussions. He does all this while knowing in the back of his mind that nothing good shall come of it. Ahab's journey of self-destruction can be diluted into four main events: the captain's first altercation with Moby Dick, the night he convinces the Pequod's crew to pledge their allegiance to his quest, Fadala's prophecy, and finally, his fatal quarrel with the white whale. The first significant event in the development of Ahab's self-destruction is his initial encounter with Moby Dick. Although this event has already occurred before either Ishmael or the reader meets Ahab, it is constantly alluded to as being the trigger of his obsession. Prior to his first battle with the whale, Ahab had already spent many years at sea. Through his experience, he has already seen how much evil is present in the world. He has encountered cannibals, fought Spaniards, and nearly dies at the hand of an intense storm. He has also been separated from his wife and son, the only people to whom he shows true compassion. All of these aspects stack up like dominoes. Once the whale takes his leg off, the first is tipped over. One thing is clear: Ahab blames God for all his injustices in life. He decides only he can control what happens, and ultimately concludes that he is superior to God himself. This is why he is described as being an ungodly, godly-like man in chapter 16. His encounter with Moby Dick threatens his godlike opinions of himself, yet he still feels like he is capable of destroying him. The whale, to Ahab, is God trying to prove him wrong. This is seen as Ahab's chance to conquer the world's evil and spite an unjust God. Without this initial encounter, he would not have undertaken the perilous journey. The next important event in Ahab's journey towards self-destruction is the night aboard the Pequod, when he convinces his crew to join him on the mission to kill the white whale. This occurs the first time he formally addresses the crew. They are naturally full of questions and curiosity towards their captain. Ahab feeds them alcohol all night, baptizes their weapons, and offers up a great sum of money for whoever spots the whale first. He exclaims to the crew, "Whosoever of ye raises me a white-headed whale with a wrinkled brow and crooked jaw, whosoever of ye raises me a white-headed whale with 3 holes punctured in his starboard fluke, look ye, whosoever raises me that same white whale, he shall have this gold ounce, my boys." This money is so much more than any of the crew members' monetary shares for the expedition. This has them hooked. Ahab knows he cannot pursue the whale alone, so once his manipulative personality draws them in, and they pledge their allegiance, he is more sure of the journey. He then spends even more time below deck than he did prior to his first appearance, analyzing maps at all hours, obsessively trying to pinpoint the location of Moby Dick. Ahab becomes all the more convinced of his godlike status once his personal harpooner, Caudill, relays a prophecy. Caudill claims that Ahab will only die if he sees 2 hearses floating in the ocean, one made from American wood and one not made by man. The other catch is that this will only happen if Caudill dies first, and by him. Ahab is still continually presented many omens to abandon his journey, but the prophecy seems so improbable that he does not. He is now fully convinced that he will complete the journey unscathed. Therefore, any risks that he needs to take will be done so without question. Ahab has been teetering between sanity and madness this whole time, but the prophecy was the final component he needed to fully pursue the whale without any apprehension. The final event in Ahab's journey to self-destruction begins with his famous exclamatory statement, "There she blows, a hump like a snow hill. It's Moby Dick." A few chapters prior, Ahab is nearly convinced by First Mate Starbuck to stop pursuing the whale, but once he sees Moby Dick off in the distance, quitting is out of the picture. Ahab orders the crew to lower the boats, and what follows is the climactic 3-day chase of the whale. The thought of killing the whale has taken over Ahab so much that he has no regards for any of the crew's life, except for Starbuck, offering him the opportunity to stay on the ship so as to see his family again, just as Ahab knew he would never live to do. The battle between the two unfolds just as expected. Ahab continually rows to and from the Pequod to hail harpoons at the Leviathan. Even as Caudill's prophecy is becoming reality, Ahab goes back for more. The whale gives the crew one last chance to leave, yet Ahab is completely blinded by his own motivation. All of the crew, besides Ishmael, is killed before the 3rd day. As Ahab stood alone in his whaleboat, moments before death, he finally comes to his senses. He reaches the epiphany of his own life, for he had been driven by his own selfish emotions rather than thinking logically. Unfortunately for Ahab, this realization comes much too late. He dies alone out in the deep, ineffable ocean. Captain Ahab is not the first person to lead himself on a journey towards destruction, nor will he be the last, but he does epitomize how harmful an obsession can become to one's well-being. His self-destruction can be highlighted by 4 major events: his first encounter with Moby Dick, the night he convinces the crew to join the pursuit, the telling of Caudill's prophecy, and the final battle with the whale. It would be easy to dislike Ahab because of the hate-filled, obsessional person he becomes, yet there is another way to look at it. Readers could also choose to feel pity for Ahab, who was just trying to make sense of his harsh and unjust life. He was entirely convinced that he was doing right by chasing Moby Dick. When he finally realizes his wrongdoings, it is entirely possible to feel empathy for the once great Captain Ahab.